"Ms. Carter, did you steal this credit card?" Denise's hands trembled in her lap. The compliance office smelled like industrial cleaner and fear, sharp, chemical, wrong. Across the desk sat 3 people who held her entire life in a manila folder. Susan Winters, the hospital's chief compliance officer, a man in a charcoal suit whose cufflinks cost more than Denise's monthly rent, and a woman with a tablet recording every breath. 26 years. 26 years of perfect service at St. Augustine Medical Center in Atlanta, and now she sat here accused of being a thief. "I didn't steal anything," Denise whispered. Her voice sounded small, defeated, nothing like the confident ER nurse who'd talked down combative patients and held the hands of dying strangers. The man leaned forward. "Then explain how a credit card belonging to Raymond Hale, a billionaire, ended up in your possession. Explain the $2,452 you spent in 5 hours." The number hung in the air like an accusation. Denise thought about her mother waiting at home, about the eviction notice in her purse, about the insulin that would run out in 6 days. She thought about the truth, and how sometimes the truth sounded like a lie. "He gave it to me," she said. Nobody spoke. The woman's fingers paused over her tablet. "You're telling us," Susan said slowly, "that a man worth $2.3 billion walked into our ER and handed you his credit card? For no reason?" "There was a reason. But it started 18 hours ago, and if you want the truth, you need to hear all of it. 18 hours earlier, 5:47 a.m. The automatic doors hissed open, and Denise stepped into controlled chaos. The ER never slept, it just changed flavor. Dawn shift meant the overnight disasters were still bleeding in Bay 3. The psych holds were getting agitated, and the waiting room was filling with people who'd waited all night to see if their pain would go away on its own. It hadn't. Denise's feet ached before she'd taken 10 steps. 58 years old, second double shift this week, and her body kept a precise accounting of every sacrifice. The cheap sneakers from Payless, $24.99, the best she could afford, had stopped cushioning anything 6 months ago. Her lower back sang a song of grocery bags carried up 3 flights of stairs, of lifting patients twice her size, of sleeping in a chair next to her. Mother's bed when the pain got bad. She'd been up since 3:30 a.m. Her mother, Miss Laverne, had needed help to the bathroom twice. The second time, Denise had seen the way her mama's left knee buckled, the grimace she tried to hide. "Mama, you took your pressure medicine." "I will, baby." "Mama, I said I will." Her mother had looked away, staring at the water stain on the ceiling they couldn't afford to fix. "Stop fussing." Denise had heated up leftover rice and beans, 3 days old now, but still good, and watched her mother eat half and claim she was full. Translation, saving the rest for tomorrow, or for Denise. Miss Laverne had been rationing food since the grocery money ran short on the 18th of every month, and no amount of arguing changed it. Now Denise checked her phone in the break room. 4 missed calls from her mother's number between 5:15 and 5:45 a.m. Her stomach dropped. She texted, "At work, you okay?" The response came immediately. "Fine, baby. Knees locking up again. Took my medicine. Don't worry. Don't worry." Denise had learned to translate her mother's language years ago. Fine meant hurting. Don't worry meant she'd been crying in the bathroom where Denise couldn't hear. "Carter, you're on trauma," called Rodriguez from the nurse's station. "Bay 2 needs a line, Bay 4 is waiting on labs, and we've got a regular in 5 claiming chest pains, but really just wants breakfast." Denise pocketed her phone, the rule she'd lived by for 26 years echoed in her head. Never ask for help. Never be a burden. Just work harder. By 9:30 a.m., she'd placed 5 IVs, caught a dangerous drug interaction, talked a teenager through a panic attack, and restocked 3 crash carts. Her feet screamed. Her back ached. But she kept moving because stopping meant thinking, and thinking meant calculating the numbers that never added up. Rent due in 6 days, $1,240. Electric bill, 3 weeks overdue, $310. Mama's insulin refill, $280, even with the discount card. The church van that used to take Miss Laverne to Sunday service had stopped, running their route, which meant Uber rides they couldn't afford, or her mother sitting home alone, slowly disappearing from the community that kept her alive. Denise was restocking gauze in the hallway when she heard the voice, sharp, desperate, scared. I don't care what your system says. I had an appointment at 9 o'clock. She turned. The man was early 70s, silver hair, expensive wool coat despite the mild October weather. But it was his eyes that stopped her, exhausted, terrified in a way she recognized. The fear of someone who'd heard words like progression and limited options, and needed this appointment the way drowning people need air. The receptionist, barely 22, kept clicking her mouse with rising panic. Sir, there's no record. I confirmed twice last week. The man swayed. His hand on the counter shook. Denise stepped forward. Can I help? He turned to her and his anger collapsed into something raw. I just need to see my doctor, please. She wasn't supposed to access the scheduling system. But she'd been breaking that rule for years because helping people mattered more than protecting her job. She found the problem in 30 seconds. His appointment had been entered into the wrong department's database. 5 minutes and 1 phone call later, she handed him a new appointment slip. 1:30 this afternoon, Building C, 3rd floor. Dr. Brennan will see you. He stared at the paper like she'd handed him a lifeline. You didn't have to do that. Yes, I did. She smiled, even though her feet throbbed and her back screamed and she wanted to sit down more than she wanted to breathe. You take care of yourself, you hear? He studied her face, really looked, in a way most people didn't. She saw him notice the frayed edge of her scrubs, the cheap sneakers, the way she shifted weight from foot to foot because standing hurt. How long have you worked here? 26 years. And you still care enough to fix problems that aren't yours? Denise thought about her mother, rationing pills because the bottle had to last until payday. She thought about her son, who texted twice a month if she was lucky. She thought about her sisters, who called when they needed money but vanished when she did. Somebody's got to, she said quietly. The man reached into his coat. When his hand emerged, it held a credit card, heavy, black, with a weight that felt wrong. My name is Raymond Hale. I came here to understand how the system treats people it forgets. You just showed me something I needed to see. He placed the card in her palm. 24 hours. Use it for what you need. Not what you want, what you need. There's a difference. Denise's breath caught. I can't. You can. 24 hours starting now. 9:43 a.m. Thursday. By 9:43 Friday, I'll find you. He turned to leave, paused. Don't let me down, Denise Carter. Then he was gone, and she stood holding a piece of plastic that felt like it might explode. Now, the compliance office. So you spent $2,452, Susan said, based on a conversation with no witnesses, no documentation, no proof? I have the receipts. I can show you everything I bought. That's not the question. The question is whether you had permission. The suited man opened his folder. Groceries, $487. Pharmacy, $340. Utilities office, $310. Best Buy, $425. Rent payment, $890. He looked up. You paid your own bills with a stranger's credit card. He told me to use it for what I needed. Or, the suited man said, you found a lost card and saw an opportunity? No, Denise's voice cracked. I'm not a thief. Then where's the card now? At home. I was going to return it this morning at 9:43, like he said. Susan stood. You're suspended pending investigation. Bring us that card immediately and pray Mr. Hale confirms your story. The word suspended landed like a fist. No work meant no paycheck. No paycheck meant eviction. No food, no medicine, no hope. Please, Denise whispered. I'm telling the truth. Then prove it. What did Denise really buy in those 5 hours? And will Raymond Hale save her, or has she lost everything by daring to accept help? Subscribe now to find out if the truth can save her when nobody believes it. Denise walked through the hospital corridor in a fog. Every face she passed seemed to know. The whispers followed her like smoke. Did you hear? Suspended. Credit card fraud. I always thought she was different. Her hands shook as she pushed through the staff exit into the parking lot. The October sun felt too bright, too normal for a day when everything was collapsing. She fumbled for her phone and called the one person who'd always answered. It rang 4 times. 5, 6. Baby? Her mother's voice was thick with sleep. You okay? You never called during your shift. Denise opened her mouth, and the words died in her throat. How could she explain? Mama, I tried to accept help, and now they think I'm a criminal. Mama, I might lose my job. Mama, the eviction notice I didn't tell you about just became inevitable. I'm fine, Denise heard herself say. Just checking on you. Mm-hmm. Miss Laverne made that sound that meant she heard everything Denise wasn't saying. You coming home soon? Yeah, Mama. Soon. Denise sat in her 15-year-old Honda, the one with the check engine light that had been on for 8 months, and stared at the hospital building. 26 years. She'd given them everything, and now they'd stripped her name off the schedule like she'd never existed. Her phone buzzed. A text from her coworker, Shanice. Girl, what happened? Rodriguez just told us you're suspended? Then Marcus. D, people are saying you stole something. That's not true, right? Then 3 texts from her sister, Renee. I heard you got fired. What did you do? Can you still watch Jaden on Saturday? Denise turned her phone face down and drove home, 16 hours earlier, 6:15 p.m., Thursday. Denise had stood in her cramped apartment kitchen, staring at the black credit card on the counter like it might bite her. Miss Laverne was napping in the bedroom, the sounds of her labored breathing audible through the thin walls. The eviction notice sat next to the card. Red letters, deadline clear, pay $1,240 by October 31st or vacate premises. 6 days. Denise picked up the card, put it down, picked it up again, 24 hours. Use it for what you need. She thought about calling Raymond Hale, asking for something in writing, protecting herself. But she didn't have his number, didn't know how to reach him. He'd said he'd find her at 9:43 Friday morning, which meant she had to trust a stranger's word against the very real consequences of her life falling apart. Her mother's voice drifted from the bedroom. Denise? You home, baby? Yes, Mama. Just making dinner. Don't fuss too much. I'm not that hungry. Translation. Save the food. Make it last. Denise made a decision. She grabbed her purse, the credit card, and a small notebook where she kept track of every dollar. If she was going to do this, she'd document everything. Every purchase, every reason, every receipt. The truth might be all she had, but at least it would be complete. First stop, Publix, the grocery store 3 blocks away. She walked the aisles like a woman defusing a bomb, carefully, precisely, aware that every choice mattered. No luxuries, no wants, just what they needed to survive. Fresh vegetables instead of canned, $43. Her. Mother needed fiber, needed vitamins that actually tasted like food. Chicken breasts, not the cheapest cuts, $38, protein for her mama's healing, for strength. Whole wheat bread, real butter, brown rice, beans, sweet potatoes, apples, bananas, 127. Denise stood in the feminine hygiene aisle and almost cried. She'd been using folded paper towels for 3 days because pads weren't essential when rent was due. She put a box in her cart, $12, dish soap, laundry detergent, toilet paper, the soft kind, not the institutional sandpaper, $34. Multivitamins for her mother, $28. Compression socks. That actually worked. The medical-grade ones her doctor had recommended 2 years ago, $45. At checkout, her hands trembled as she swiped the card. The cashier didn't blink. The machine approved. Total, $487. Denise loaded the bags into her car and sat gripping the steering wheel. She'd just spent more on groceries than she usually spent in 2 months. The guilt was a living thing, crawling up her throat. But then she thought about her mother eating half portions, about skipping meals herself so Miss Laverne could have seconds, about the humiliation of being 58 years old and stealing. Tampons from the hospital supply closet. What you need, not what you want. Second stop, Walgreens. The pharmacy tech knew her by name. "Ms. Carter, you're early for your mama's refill." "I know, but I can pay for it today." The words felt strange. She was always asking for extensions, payment plans, splitting prescriptions to make them last longer. Insulin, 3-month supply, $180. Blood pressure medication, 67. Arthritis cream, the prescription strength, $48. Pain relievers that actually worked, 24. Antacid for her own stomach, which had been burning for months, $21. Total, $340. The pharmacy tech smiled. "It's nice when things work out, isn't it?" Denise nodded, unable to speak around the lump in her throat. Third stop, Georgia Power Office, downtown. The woman behind the bulletproof glass had the expression of someone who'd heard every excuse and believed none of them. "Account number?" Denise slid the overdue notice through the slot. 3 weeks late. Red text. Warning of disconnection. The woman typed, "That'll be $310. Cash or card?" "Card." The transaction processed. The woman handed her a receipt with no warmth, no judgment, just tired professionalism. "You're current now. Try to pay on time next month." Next month. As if Denise had any idea how she'd survive next month. But at least tonight, her mother would have lights, heat, a working refrigerator for that insulin. Fourth stop, A+ Rent-A-Center. This one hurt. The man at the desk looked at her worn scrubs, her cheap shoes, and she saw the calculation in his eyes. "Can you afford this?" "I need to pay down my balance," Denise said. She owed them $1,190 for the used laptop she'd bought 8 months ago, the one she'd needed for her mother's telehealth appointments during COVID, for the virtual church services that kept Miss Laverne connected when she couldn't leave the house. The payments were $85 a month, and she'd missed 3. "How much can you pay?" he asked. She thought about the 24 hours, about what was left, about what was coming. $890. That brings me current and pays ahead, right? He blinked. Yeah, that works. The debt didn't disappear, but the late fees did. The threatening calls would stop. The repo notice would vanish. Fifth stop, Best Buy. This was the hardest. Denise stood in front of the display of basic smartphones for 15 minutes before a sales associate approached. "Can I help you find something?" "A phone. Simple. For my mother. For telehealth appointments." Miss Laverne's ancient flip phone couldn't download the MyChart app, couldn't do video calls with doctors who'd moved everything virtual. It meant Denise had to take off work for every appointment, which meant lost wages, which meant falling further behind. The associate showed her a basic smartphone, $189. A year of prepaid service through Mint Mobile, $180. A protective case, $25. Screen protector, $15. A portable charger, because the apartment's outlets were unreliable, $16. Total, $425. Will this let her video call her doctor? Absolutely, and it's easy to use. We can set it up for you right now. Denise handed over the card. Now, 7:30 p.m., Thursday evening, Denise sat at her tiny kitchen table with every receipt laid out like evidence at a crime scene. She'd spent $2,250 in 5 hours on groceries, medicine, utilities, rent, a phone so her mother could see a doctor without Denise losing another day's pay. Nothing frivolous, nothing selfish, just survival. Miss Laverne shuffled into the kitchen, her cane tapping against the worn linoleum. "Baby, why you buy all this food? Where'd this money come from?" And that's when Denise's phone rang. Her sister Renee's name flashed on the screen. She answered. "Hey, Renee." "Girl, Shanice's cousin works at Publix, and she said you came through with some fancy black card buying. Groceries like you won the lottery. What's going on? You hit the Powerball and didn't tell nobody? Denise's blood went cold. It's not like that. Then what's it like? Because I could use some help with… Renee, I can't talk right now. Can't talk. But you can spend money you apparently got from… Somewhere? That's how it is? Denise hung up. Her hands were shaking again. The phone rang immediately. Her other sister, Keisha. Then a text from her son. Mom, Aunt Renee said you came into some money? Another text from Renee. Don't ignore family. Another from Keisha. I need $200 for Trey's school. Supplies, can you help? Denise turned off her phone. Miss Laverne lowered herself into a chair, wincing. Baby, what's happening? I tried to accept help, Mama, and now I don't know if I made everything worse. Her mother reached across the table and took Denise's hand. Her grip was weak but steady. You've been carrying this whole family on your back for 4 years. If somebody finally wanted to help, you did right to take it. But what if… No what ifs. You did what you had to do. Now we deal with what comes next. Together. Denise looked at her mother, 76 years old, body failing, spirit unbroken, and felt something crack open in her chest. For the first time in 26 years, she'd asked for help, and the world might punish her for it. But tonight, her mother would eat a real meal, take her medicine, sleep with the lights on. Tomorrow, Denise would face the consequences. Will Denise's family destroy her before Raymond Hale can confirm the truth? And what happens when everyone who ignored her suddenly wants a piece? Subscribe to find out if she can survive the people who claim to love her. Denise woke at 4:47 a.m. to 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. She'd turned her phone back on out of habit, the muscle memory of being on call for 26 years stronger than her instinct for self-preservation. The messages painted a picture she recognized but had never experienced from this angle. Everyone who'd been too busy to help suddenly had time to ask questions. Renee, you really gonna ignore me like this? Keisha, I'm your sister and you won't even answer. Marcus Jr., Mom, what's going on? Aunt Renee is blowing up my phone. Renee, I know you see these messages. Cousin Deborah, who she hadn't heard from in 2 years. Hey, cuz, heard you? Doing well. Let's catch up, Keisha. I need that $200 today. Trey's field trip is tomorrow. Renee, fine. Don't help your family. See if we help you when you need something. The irony would have been funny if it wasn't destroying her from the inside out. For 4 years, Denise had been the one calling, asking, begging for help with their mother. For 4 years, everyone had been too broke, too busy, too far away. But now that they thought she had money, they'd found her number just fine. She sat on the edge of her bed in the dark, phone glowing in her hands, and felt something shift. A small, hard kernel of anger she'd been swallowing for years finally lodged in her throat where she couldn't ignore it. Miss Laverne's voice drifted from the next room. You up, baby? Yes, Mama. Come here. I want to show you something. Denise found her mother sitting up in bed, the new smartphone on, her lap glowing softly. Miss Laverne's face was radiant. I figured out how to make the letters bigger, she said proudly. And look, I found the church live stream. I can watch Sunday service right here. Her eyes shimmered. I've been missing church for 8 months, Denise. 8 months feeling cut off from my people. And now, she pressed her hand to her chest. Now I can go back. Denise sat on the bed beside her mother and cried. Baby, what's wrong? They think I stole it, Mama. The card. The hospital suspended me. And everyone, Renee, Keisha, even Marcus, they all want something, but nobody's asking if I'm okay. Miss Laverne set the phone down and took Denise's face in her weathered hands. Listen to me. You have been the only one showing up for 4 years. The only one paying my bills, buying my medicine, taking me to appointments, sitting with me when the pain gets bad. Your sisters call me twice a month if I'm lucky, and your son sends emojis like that's the same as caring. So if they're upset now, that's their shame to carry, not yours. But what if I lose my job? Then we figure it out, together. Miss Laverne's grip tightened. You've been carrying us alone for too long. Maybe it's time to let go of people who only show up when they think you've got something they want. Denise wanted to believe her. But the numbers didn't change just because the truth was on her side. 9:15 a.m., Friday, St. Augustine Medical Center. Denise walked back into the hospital, carrying the black credit card in an envelope with every receipt organized chronologically. She'd barely slept, had rehearsed what she'd say 100 times, and still felt like she was walking to her own execution. Susan Winters was waiting in her office with the same two people from yesterday, the suited man and the woman with the tablet. Ms. Carter, you brought the card? Denise slid the envelope across the desk. Everything's there. The card, every receipt, notes about what I bought and why. I spent $2,450 on groceries, medicine, utilities, rent, and a phone for my mother's telehealth. Appointments. Not $1 on anything that wasn't necessary. The suited man opened the envelope and began examining receipts. His expression gave away nothing. We contacted Mr. Hale's office last night, Susan said. They confirmed that he was at this hospital on Thursday morning for a cardiology appointment. Hope flickered in Denise's chest. So he was here. It proves he was here. It doesn't prove he gave you his card. Susan folded her hands. In fact, his assistant seemed quite surprised when we asked about it. She said Mr. Hale never mentioned giving anyone his credit card and that he's currently unreachable, in meetings all day today. The hope died. But he said he'd find me at 9:43. He said, Ms. Carter, we have a problem. The suited man looked up from the receipts. Everything you purchased was for your personal benefit, your rent, your utilities, your mother's medications. If Mr. Hale did give you this card, he presumably meant for you to help patients, donate to charity, something altruistic. Instead, you paid your own bills. Denise's vision blurred. He said, what you need. He said there's a difference between need and want. I showed him. Need. Or you saw an opportunity and took it. No. Her voice cracked. I'm not a thief. The woman with the tablet spoke up. Ms. Carter, your employee file shows 17 disciplinary notes over the years for accessing patient records without authorization, giving medical advice outside your scope of practice, and violating hospital protocols to help patients navigate insurance issues. She paused. You have a pattern of breaking rules when you think you're helping people. Those rules were wrong. Patients were falling through cracks because of paperwork errors, and that's not your decision to make, the suited man interrupted. And it establishes a pattern of behavior. You believe your judgment supersedes policy. Denise stood abruptly. I've worked here for 26 years. I've saved lives. I've held hands when people died alone. I've caught medication errors, talked down, violent patients, trained new nurses, covered shifts when people called out. I have given everything to this hospital, and you're going to fire me because I accepted help from someone who offered it? We're not firing you, Susan said carefully. Yet. But you remain suspended until we can confirm your story with Mr. Hale directly, and if we can't. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. Denise walked out of the office on legs that barely held her. In the hallway, she passed Marcus and Shanice. Marcus looked away. Shanice mouthed, I'm sorry, but didn't stop walking. She made it. To her car before the panic attack hit. Chest tight, breath shallow, hands shaking so hard she couldn't get the key in the ignition. She sat in the parking lot for 20 minutes, trying to breathe, trying to think, trying to figure out how she'd survive if Raymond Hale never showed up. Her phone buzzed. Renee. So you got money for rent but not $200 for your nephew's field trip? That's messed up. Another buzz. Keisha. Mama told me what happened. If you get fired, can you still watch the kids while I work? Another. Her son. Mom, can you call me when you have a minute? Denise turned off her phone, started the car, and drove home through a city that suddenly felt hostile and unfamiliar. 11:30 a.m. Denise's apartment. Miss Laverne had made tea, The fancy kind Denise had bought yesterday, the kind that actually tasted good instead of the discount store brand that tasted like hot water and regret. They sat at the kitchen table together, and for the first time in 4 years, Denise told her mother everything. The numbers that never added up, the skipped meals, the stolen tampons from the hospital supply closet, the nights she'd cried in the car before coming inside because she couldn't let Miss Laverne see her break, the eviction notice, the electric bill, the constant crushing weight of being the only one who showed up. "Why didn't you tell me?" Miss Laverne asked, tears streaming down her weathered face. "Because you would have stopped eating, stopped taking your medicine. Tried to fix it, and you can't, Mama. You can't work. You can't magic up money. The only thing you could do was suffer more, and I wouldn't let you do that." They cried together, holding hands across the cheap table, and Denise felt something unlock in her chest, a pressure valve she'd kept sealed. For so long she'd forgotten it was there. "What happens now?" Miss Laverne finally asked. "I don't know. If Raymond Hale doesn't show up, if he doesn't confirm he gave me that card, they'll fire me, probably prosecute me. And even if he does show up," she gestured at her phone, dark and silent on the counter, "my family's already decided I'm the villain. Then they're not your family. Family shows up. Family carries each other. Those people?" Miss Laverne's voice hardened. "Those are just people you're related to. There's a difference." A knock at the door made them both jump. Denise opened it to find Shanice standing in the hallway, still in her scrubs. "I'm on my lunch break," Shanice said quickly. "I can't stay. But I needed you to know. I believe you. And I'm not the only one. Marcus does too. He's just scared to say it because Rodriguez is watching everyone. But we know you, Dee. We know you wouldn't steal." Denise's eyes burned. "Thank you. There's something else." Shanice glanced down the hallway, then lowered her voice. "That man who was here yesterday? Raymond Hale? Security has footage of him in the ER. I heard them talking about it. You weren't lying about him being here. But can they see him giving me the card? I don't know. But maybe it's enough." Shanice squeezed her arm. "Hold on, Dee. The truth has to count for something." After she left, Denise stood by the door, feeling the first fragile thread of hope weave itself back together in her chest. The truth had to count for something. It had to. But what if the security footage doesn't show enough? And what if Raymond Hale never comes back? Subscribe to find out if Denise can prove the truth before her whole life collapses, and whether being right is enough when the system is designed to doubt you. The security footage was grainy and incomplete, and it was about to determine the rest of Denise's life. She sat in a small conference room at St. Augustine Medical Center with Susan Winters, the suited man who'd finally introduced himself as Kenneth Bradshaw from the hospital's legal department, and 2 security officers hunched over a laptop. "There," one officer said, pausing the video. "That's 9:41 a.m., Thursday, main ER corridor, camera 7. The screen showed Denise at the nurse's station, then Raymond Hale approaching the reception desk. The angle was wrong. The camera caught the back of his head, Denise's profile, but not their hands, not the moment he gave her the card. "Can you see anything?" Susan asked. The officer zoomed in. The image pixelated into uselessness. "Not clearly. They're talking, but I can't make out any exchange of objects." Kenneth Bradshaw leaned forward. "What about other angles?" "Camera 3 covers the waiting room, but there's a pillar blocking the view. Camera 9 gets the hallway, but they're too far away." The officer pulled up 3 more clips. Each one showed Denise and Raymond talking, but none captured the critical moment. Denise's stomach twisted. "He gave me the card. I'm not lying." "The footage doesn't prove you are," Susan said carefully. "But it also doesn't prove you aren't. So what now?" "Now we wait for Mr. Hale to respond to our messages." Kenneth checked his phone. "His office has been less than cooperative. Less than cooperative." Translation: Raymond Hale's people thought the hospital was trying to shake down their boss, and Denise was collateral damage. "How long do I wait?" Denise asked. "How long am I suspended while my family falls apart?" "Until we have answers." Susan's voice wasn't unkind, but it was final. "I'm sorry, Miss Carter. That's the best I can do." Denise walked out of the conference room into the late October sunlight and realized she had nowhere to go. No work to anchor her, no routine to hold her together. Just a phone full of messages from people who wanted pieces of her and a mother at home who deserved better than a daughter who might be unemployed by Monday. Her phone buzzed. Not family this time, a number she didn't recognize. She answered. "Hello? Miss Carter?" A woman's voice, professional and clipped. "This is Jennifer Marks from Channel 4. News. We received an anonymous tip about a nurse at St. Augustine who allegedly stole a credit card from a prominent Atlanta businessman. Would you care to comment?" Denise's vision went white at the edges. "I didn't steal anything." "So you deny the allegations?" "There are no allegations. There's a misunderstanding and our source says you're suspended pending a fraud investigation. Is that accurate?" "Who is your source?" "I can't reveal that. But if you'd like to tell your side of the story." Denise hung up. Her hands were shaking so hard she almost dropped the phone. It was happening. The nightmare was metastasizing, spreading beyond the hospital into the world where reputations died and Google searches lasted forever. Somewhere someone had talked to the press, and now her name, her face, her life would be attached to words like fraud and theft and investigation. She called Shanice. "Did you tell anyone outside the hospital?" "What? No. Dee, what's wrong?" "Channel 4 News just called me. Someone tipped them off." Shanice sucked in a breath. "Oh, no. Oh, Dee, I swear it wasn't me. I wouldn't." "I know, but someone did." Denise leaned against her car, the metal hot against her back. "This is going to be on the news. My mother's going to see it. My son. Everyone. Maybe it won't run. Maybe they'll fact-check and realize there's no story." They both knew that was a lie. The story wasn't the truth. It was the drama. Nurse accused of fraud made headlines. Nurse vindicated was a footnote on page 7. Denise drove home on autopilot, her mind cycling through worst-case scenarios like a prayer she couldn't stop reciting. 3:45 p.m., Denise's apartment. Miss Laverne was watching her church live stream when Denise came in. She looked up, saw her daughter's face, and turned off the phone. "What happened?" Denise told her about the security footage, the unreachable Raymond Hale, the reporter. With every word, she watched her mother's expression harden into something fierce and protective. "They're trying to destroy you," Miss Laverne said when Denise finished. "They're trying to protect the hospital." "Same thing." Her mother struggled to her feet, grimacing as her knees locked. "And your sisters? Your son? They calling to check on you?" Denise looked at her phone. 17 new messages, all asking for something or accusing her of something. Not one asking if she was okay. "That's what I thought." Miss Laverne made her way to the kitchen and started pulling out ingredients. The fresh vegetables Denise had bought, the real butter, the chicken. "We're making a proper dinner, and then we're going to figure out what you do when the people who should protect you won't." "Mama, you don't have to." "Yes, I do. You've been taking care of me for 4 years. Tonight, I take care of you." They cooked together in the tiny kitchen, and for a few hours Denise let herself pretend everything was normal. That she had a job to go back to, that her name wasn't about to be dragged through the news, that the truth mattered as much as it should. At 6:30 p.m., her phone rang. Unknown number again. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. "Ms. Carter?" A man's voice this time, warm and slightly amused. "This is Raymond Hale. I understand you've been having some trouble on my account." Denise's knees buckled. She sat down hard on the kitchen chair. "Mr. Hale, yes. The hospital thinks I stole your card." "So I've heard. My assistant has been fielding increasingly frantic calls from St. Augustine's legal department." He paused. "I apologize. I didn't anticipate this reaction. I thought the card itself would be proof enough of my intentions. They need you to confirm you gave it to me." Willingly. Of course. I'll call them immediately and— They need you to come in person, Denise interrupted. They need documentation. They need it to be official and witnessed and provable. Ah. Raymond was quiet for a moment. That's more complicated. I'm in New York for meetings until Monday. Monday. 4 days away. 4 days of suspension, reporters calling, her family circling, and her reputation dissolving. I understand, Denise said, even though she didn't, even though she wanted to scream. Ms. Carter, Denise, I'm going to fix this, but I need you to hold on until Monday. Can you do that? Do I have a choice? We always have choices. The question is whether we have good ones. He sighed. For what? It's worth. I saw what you bought. My bank sends me transaction alerts. Groceries, medicine, utilities, a phone for telehealth. You did exactly what I asked. You showed me what need looks like. And now you're being punished for it. Yes, that ends Monday, I promise you. After he hung up, Denise sat staring at her phone. Monday felt like a lifetime away. Miss Laverne set a plate in front of her. Chicken seasoned properly, vegetables that tasted like actual food, rice that wasn't 3 days old. He called? He'll fix it Monday. But not today. No, not today. They ate in silence, and Denise tried to find comfort in the meal, in her mother's presence, in the fact that at least Raymond Hale was real and willing to help. But the relief was thin, fragile, easily shattered by the knowledge that 4 more days of this might break her completely. At 8:17 p.m., her phone lit up with a news alert: nurse at St. Augustine Medical Center under investigation for credit card fraud. The story was live, and buried in the 3rd paragraph was her full name. Denise's name is in the news, her family is closing in, and Raymond Hale won't be back until Monday. Can she survive 4 days of public shame without losing everything, including herself? Subscribe to find out what happens when the whole world thinks you're guilty and all you have is the truth. Sunday morning felt like drowning in slow motion. Denise woke to 147 notifications on her phone. Messages, tags, shares, comments from people she hadn't spoken to in years, all with opinions about her character based on a 200-word news article that got half the facts wrong. I always knew something was off about her nurses make good money. Why would she need to steal? Her poor mother having a daughter like that innocent until proven guilty, people girl, bye, the evidence is right there. The article had her name, her age, the hospital, and just enough details to make her sound guilty while technically avoiding libel. No mention of Raymond Hale giving her permission. No mention of what she'd actually bought. Just suspended. Nurse under investigation for unauthorized use of credit card belonging to prominent businessman. Miss Laverne had insisted on going to church, the real church, not the live stream, because I'm not hiding like we did something wrong. Denise had helped her mother dress in her good Sunday clothes, called an Uber they really couldn't afford, and watched her walk into Ebenezer Baptist with her head high and her cane tapping steadily against the pavement. Denise stayed home. She couldn't face the whispers, the stares, the questions disguised as concern. At 11:23 a.m., someone knocked on her door. She looked through the peephole and saw her son, Marcus Jr., 29 years old, wearing the same expression he'd worn as a child when he'd broken something and wasn't sure if he should confess or run. Denise opened the door. "Hey, Mom." "Marcus." She stepped aside. "Come in." He walked into the apartment he'd grown up in, smaller now that he'd seen the world, shabbier than he probably remembered. She watched him take in the patched sofa, the chipped paint, the refrigerator covered in medical appointment reminders, and past due notices she hadn't had time to throw away. "You drove up." "From Atlanta?" Denise asked. "Yeah, He rubbed the back of his neck. "Aunt Renee called me. Said you were in trouble. Said you were acting crazy, spending money you didn't have, and now you're suspended from work." "That what she said? Is it true?" Denise poured herself coffee, the good kind she'd bought Thursday night. and told her son the same story she'd told the hospital, the compliance office, and herself 100 times. With every word, she watched his face, looking for the moment he'd decide whether to believe her. When she finished, he was quiet for a long time. So this billionaire just gave you his card? Because you helped him find his appointment? Yes. And you spent it on rent and groceries? Yes. Mom, that sounds crazy, unbelievable, like something a desperate woman would make up. Denise's voice hardened. I know what it sounds like, Marcus. But it's the truth. He looked away. The aunts think you're having a breakdown. They think the stress finally got to you and… The aunts, Denise interrupted, haven't helped with Grandma Laverne in 4 years. They don't call unless they need something. They don't visit. They don't send money. They don't show up. So forgive me if I don't care what they think. Marcus flinched. That's not fair. What's not fair about it? Tell me one time in the last 4 years Renee or Keisha helped me pay for Grandma's medicine. One time they took her to an appointment. One time they stayed up with her when she was in pain. They have their own lives, Mom. And I don't? The words came out sharper than she intended. I have worked myself to exhaustion for 26 years. I have sacrificed everything, my health, my savings, my time, to take care of everyone else. And the one time someone offers to help me, the one time I accept it, everyone thinks I'm either a thief or crazy. She set down her coffee cup before she threw it. Where were you, Marcus? When I was skipping meals so Grandma could eat? When I was stealing tampons from work because I couldn't afford to buy them? Where were you? I didn't know it was that bad. Because I didn't tell you. Because I didn't want to be a burden. Because I've spent my whole life making sure everyone else was okay, and I forgot that I'm allowed to need help too. Marcus stood abruptly. I should go. Yeah, you should. He paused at the door. Mom, I want to believe you, but if this guy doesn't show up tomorrow, if you can't prove, then I'll deal with it, like I deal with everything, alone. After he left, Denise sat in the quiet apartment and felt the loneliness settle over her like a weight. She'd raised that boy by herself after his father walked out. She'd worked double shifts to pay for his college. She'd been at every game, every graduation, every important moment. And now, when she needed him to believe in her, he couldn't do it. Her phone buzzed. A text from Shanice. Are you watching the news? Denise turned on the TV. Channel 4 was running a follow-up story. Questions raised about nurses' suspension. Hospital remains silent. They'd found people to interview. A former patient who said Denise had always seemed too friendly, like she wanted something. A hospital source who mentioned her history of protocol violations. The reporter, standing outside St. Augustine, speculating about what the investigation might uncover. No mention of her 26 years of perfect service. No mention of the lives she'd saved, the patients she'd advocated for, the times she'd gone above and beyond. Just innuendo and suspicion packaged as journalism. Denise turned off the TV and called the one person who might still believe her. Shanice answered immediately. Dee, I'm so sorry. I can't believe they're running these stories without… I need you to do something for me, Denise interrupted. Tomorrow morning, when Raymond Hale comes to the hospital, I need a witness, someone who can document everything. Can you do that? Of course. But Dee, what if he doesn't show? He will. He promised. Okay, but if he doesn't, then I'm done. And I'll deal with that when it happens. But until then, I'm choosing to believe that one person in this world actually meant what he said. After she hung up, Denise sat in the gathering darkness and waited for her mother to come home. The apartment felt too quiet, too empty, too much like a preview of what her life might become if everything fell apart. At 4:47 p.m., Miss Laverne came through the door, moving slower than usual, but smiling. How was church? Denise asked. Good. Pastor Kelvin prayed for you. The whole congregation did. They know? Baby, everybody knows. Your name's been on the news. Miss Laverne lowered herself onto the sofa with a wince. But Pastor Kelvin, he said something I needed to hear. He said sometimes God lets us fall into the fire so we can see who's willing to walk in after us. And sometimes the answer is nobody. But that doesn't mean we stop being worth saving. Denise sat beside her mother and rested her head on her shoulder. What if Raymond Hale doesn't show up tomorrow? Then we figure it out, together. But I believe he'll show. A man doesn't give away his credit card for no reason. He was testing something, baby. And I think you passed, or I failed, and that's why he's not answering. Or he's busy, and you're spiraling. Miss Laverne patted her hand. Get some sleep. Tomorrow's going to be a long day. But Denise didn't sleep. She lay in bed watching the clock tick toward Monday, toward 9:43 a.m., toward the moment when Raymond Hale would either save her or prove that she'd been a fool to hope. At 2:17 a.m., her phone buzzed with an email from the hospital HR department. Your suspension has been extended pending resolution of ongoing investigation. Please do not contact hospital staff or attempt to enter hospital property without prior authorization. Extended suspension. Translation: they were building a case to fire her. Denise read the email 3 times, then turned off her phone and stared at the ceiling until dawn. It's Monday morning, and everything depends on whether Raymond Hale keeps his promise. Will he show up and clear Denise's name? Or will she lose everything because she dared to trust a stranger? Subscribe now to find out if the truth is enough, or if some fires burn too hot to survive. Monday, 9:15 a.m. Denise stood outside St. Augustine Medical Center in the October sunlight, wearing her best scrubs, the navy blue ones without any fraying, the ones she saved for performance reviews and important meetings. Her hands wouldn't stop shaking. Shanice waited beside her, phone ready to record. He's going to show, she said for the 3rd time. He promised. People promise a lot of things. At 9:27, a black sedan pulled into the visitor parking lot. Raymond Hale stepped out, wearing an expensive suit and the same calm expression he'd worn when he'd handed her his credit card 5 days and a lifetime ago. Denise's knees nearly buckled with relief. Raymond approached, his eyes kind. Ms. Carter, I apologize for the delay. Shall we go clear this up? The meeting with Susan Winters and Kenneth Bradshaw took 47 minutes. Raymond explained the experiment, his word, calmly and clearly. He'd been visiting hospitals across the country incognito, observing how staff treated vulnerable patients. Denise's compassion had impressed him. The credit card was a test to see what someone who genuinely understood need would do with temporary abundance. She spent it exactly as I hoped, Raymond said. On necessities, on survival, on the kind of dignity that our system tells people they don't deserve unless they can afford it. Kenneth Bradshaw cleared his throat. With all due respect, Mr. Hale, you could have informed us of this experiment beforehand. I could have, but then Ms. Carter would have been protected by my reputation instead of judged on her own merit. And that was precisely the point. Raymond pulled out a folder. I've had my attorney draft a statement confirming everything. I'm also prepared to make a substantial donation to St. Augustine's emergency fund for staff facing financial hardship. Perhaps we can prevent other nurses from having to choose between their own survival and their patients' care. Susan looked at Denise. Ms. Carter, your suspension is lifted effective immediately. We'll need you to sign some paperwork, but you're cleared to return to work. Denise should have felt relieved. Instead, she felt hollow. I need to say something first. She looked at Kenneth, at Susan, at the woman who'd recorded her interrogation. I've worked here for 26 years. In that time, I've broken protocols to help patients navigate insurance errors. I've accessed records without authorization to catch medication mistakes. I've stayed late, come in early, covered shifts, and done whatever it took to make sure people didn't fall through the cracks. She paused. And until last Thursday, no one cared. But the moment you thought I'd taken something for myself, I was investigated within hours. That tells me everything I need to know about how this hospital values its staff. Ms. Carter. Susan? began. I'm not finished. I accept that my suspension is lifted, but I need time to decide if I want to come back to a place that was ready to destroy my reputation without even trying to believe me first. She walked out before anyone could respond. 2 weeks later, Denise sat in her apartment, kitchen with her mother, reviewing the stack of papers Raymond Hale's foundation had sent. The Dignity Initiative, they called it, a pilot program designed to provide emergency financial support for healthcare workers facing hardship, with input from people who'd actually lived it. They want you to help design it, Miss Laverne said, reading over her shoulder. You'd be a consultant. Good pay, flexible hours. I know. Denise had read the offer 17 times. It was everything she'd never dared to dream. Respect, agency, a living wage, the chance to help people without destroying herself in the process. But, her mother prompted, but I'm a nurse. That's who I am. No, baby, that's what you do. Who you are is someone who shows up for people when systems fail them. You can do that as a nurse, or you can do it by fixing the systems. Miss Laverne squeezed her hand. Either way, you stop setting yourself on fire to keep other people warm. Denise had gone back to St. Augustine the previous Monday. The hospital had issued a public apology, placed a formal commendation in her file, and offered her a small raise, all damage control, all too little too late. Her co-workers had been warm, apologetic, ashamed. Rodriguez had actually cried. But the job felt different now. Every protocol she'd once bent to help patients now felt like a trap waiting to spring. Every act of compassion carried the weight of wondering if she'd be punished for it later. She'd also set boundaries with her family. When Renee called asking for money, Denise had said no, clearly, firmly, without apology. When Keisha expected free babysitting, Denise declined. When Marcus Jr. finally called to apologize, she'd accepted, but told him that trust had to be rebuilt through actions, not words. It had been the hardest 2 weeks of her life, and the freest. Now she picked up Raymond's offer and read it one more time. The pay was good, better than nursing, actually. The hours were flexible. She could work from home, spend real time with her mother, use her experience to prevent other people from suffering the way she had. But it meant leaving bedside nursing, leaving the patients, leaving the identity she'd built over 26 years. What would you do, Mama? Miss Laverne smiled. I'd ask myself if I'm running away or running toward, and then I'd choose the one that lets me sleep at night. Denise closed her eyes and thought about the last patient she'd helped at St. Augustine. A young black woman, maybe 30, who'd come in with chest pains and no insurance. Denise had spent 2 hours navigating financial assistance programs, finding a payment plan, making sure she got the cardiac workup she needed. The woman had cried with relief. That was why Denise had become a nurse. Not the procedures or the protocols. The moment when someone felt seen, helped, believed. She could create 1,000 more of those moments by fixing the systems that failed people in the first place. I'm going to take it, Denise said. The consulting job. I'm going to help build something that means the next nurse like me doesn't have to choose between survival and compassion. Miss Laverne beamed. I'm proud of you, baby. It's scary. Good things usually are. That evening, Denise called Raymond Hale and accepted the position. She gave St. Augustine her 2 weeks' notice, ignoring the guilt that tried to tell her she was abandoning patients. She set up the new phone plan that came with her consulting contract. She bought her mother a pair of proper shoes and booked her first podiatrist appointment in 3 years. Small changes, practical ones. The kind that didn't make headlines but rebuilt lives one stable foundation at a time. The news story about her vindication ran for exactly 1 day before disappearing into the digital void. Her family stayed distant. Renee and Keisha resentful of the boundaries, Marcus Jr. trying but still learning what showing up actually meant. Some of her co-workers stayed in touch, most didn't. But Miss Laverne started attending church in person again, her new phone loaded with the live stream for days she couldn't make it. She joined a virtual Bible study group, reconnected with old friends, started smiling more. And Denise learned something she'd never believed possible: that accepting help wasn't weakness, that setting boundaries wasn't selfishness, and that sometimes the strongest thing you could do was stop carrying people who refused to walk beside you. 3 months later, the Dignity Initiative launched at 4 hospitals in Atlanta. Within the first week, 17 healthcare workers applied for emergency assistance. 14 were approved. One was a single mother of 3 working as a CNA, struggling to pay rent after her car broke down. Denise approved her application personally and sent a note. "You deserve dignity. You deserve help. This isn't charity. It's justice." She thought about the credit card Raymond Hale had placed in her hand, about the 24 hours that had broken her life open and rebuilt it into something stronger, stranger, more honest. She still didn't have a lot of money. Her apartment was still small. Her sons still called too rarely. Her sisters still didn't understand. But she had her mother's smile. She had work that mattered without destroying her. She had boundaries that protected her peace. And she had proof, hard-won and painful, that she was worth saving, even when she was the only one willing to walk into the fire after herself. That was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything. Denise learned that accepting help isn't weakness, it's survival. That setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's necessary. And that sometimes the people who should show up won't, but that doesn't make you less worthy of being saved. If this story touched you, subscribe to hear more stories about real people fighting for dignity in a system designed to break them. Because you're not alone, and you deserve better.